Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to be making some chicken parmesan with some crazy, ridiculous noodles that I got from the store and bake up a fresh sourdough loaf. So let's start by getting our sourdough out. This, I believe, is a rosemary, black pepper, and garlic loaf. I made it like 2 days ago and I've already forgotten what my inclusion was. So it's a mystery loaf. But I know that this one is a savory one because I can tell my other one that I have in the oven is a cinnamon one. So we're going to score this up and then we will put it in our nice hot Dutch oven to bake up here.
Mary sent you a gift.
Well, thank you, Mary. We appreciate that. I'm going to do a nice cut and then I'll see if I can peek and see exactly. Yep, I see rosemary and black pepper. So that is what the mystery is. And then get this going here. And score it all the way down. And then we'll do a slightly different one on this one. Do like the little feather design. And then same here on this side. Okay, let's get this in our Dutch oven to bake up. This is my big loaf, so it makes a good size one because, you know, I was making my small loaves or regular size for everyone else. And we were just not getting enough sourdough. But this guy is going to be snug as a bug in a rug in there. And then we're going to put our lid on and we're going to bake this at 500 degrees for 20 minutes. Then we will take the lid off and bake at 450 for 20 minutes to get that nice golden brown crust on here. So this Dutch oven was heating up in the oven for about 40 minutes. I think I probably put it in there. The reason I bake my sourdough in the Dutch oven is it helps trap the moisture and gives you that chewy crust, which means I don't have to do that with like a little spray bottle or a water bath or anything like that. It makes it easier. The Dutch oven does all of that. So I have kind of two Dutch ovens. I've got a round one and an oval one, so I can do my loaves and my little bowls. Okay, while we have that going, let's get our noodles cooking here so that we can then use our burner to do this. So I was at World Market, which I absolutely, this is a store I love. That's where I got my little frog planters. But I always like to check out their pasta section and all of their little like candies and everything. We were there this weekend. I'm gonna get some scissors. But I found these giant noodles and I was like, you know what? I love pasta, so we're gonna get them. This is called Fusilli Capri. And I'll take one out. I was looking at it and it said the serving size was 3 noodles. So that just kind of shows you how big and crazy they are. So this is a noodle. Although I don't think 3, this seems like a very small serving size. So I don't know, maybe for a little appetizer on here, but we're going to pop these in and we'll let them cook up and have them over here. And then once they're cooked up, we'll kind of remove them. But I'm excited to try them. I thought they'd be good. And I'm going to be patient with this. I'm going to let them sink down so I don't break them. And there we go. Kind of dunk them all in my water. And then we'll give this a nice little kind of stir on it. I'm going to just check the cooking time. Most of the time it's 8 minutes, and that's what it said, 8 minutes. Perfect on there. You know, some pastas need a little bit longer, but this shape is kind of fairly. So I'm just going to let them soak in, and then I'll kind of let them dip under. But we're just going to give a quick little stir. These noodles, again, are ridiculous, but, you know, that's what makes them fun. Okay, while we are waiting for our noodles to start kind of cooking, I'll give them a quick stir in a few minutes. Let's make up our dredges for our chicken parmesan. on here. So we're going to add in, I've got 3 really big chicken breasts that I'll fillet up and cut.
Where did you say you found those noodles?
At World Market. It's kind of like a global store that has a whole bunch of different things. But they have a bunch of like international foods there. And so I always love to check it out. And they have my hippo snacks, which are that's the main reason I go in there is for the hippo snacks, which is by Kinder. And it is one of my favorite, things. You used to not be able to get them here in America at all, but I love them. We're going to do 2 cups of all-purpose flour here. And it's the fact that I've got my whole family hooked on them. It took my husband years to try the hippo snack, and then he ate it, and now it's probably one of his favorite candies. And I was like, they're so good. Yes, they're little tiny hippos that are like wafers and filled with, there's 2 types. One's filled with hazelnut and one's filled with a chocolate spread. So good. So good. Yes, I have a bloat on there, and he eats a bloat. He eats like a whole box at one time. I always get him at Christmas in bulk for everyone. Okay, we're going to add in some Italian seasoning, about a tablespoon or so, a good amount. And then I'm going to add in some garlic salt, about a tablespoon. A couple good shakes here. You want to make sure it's well seasoned up. And then I don't think I grabbed all my spices. I'm going to grab some onion powder. That's going to give a nice savory flavor to it. And then I want to do a little bit of paprika. That gives a nice kind of golden color.
What was the name of those noodles?
They are called Fusilli. Fusilli. I'm really terrible at pronouncing things, guys. Fusilli Capri. So I'll just give you that because I can't even pronounce all the English words. There are certain ones that I just can't do. That was always one thing so I took a lot of languages when I was in high school, and I took German, Spanish, and Latin. And that was the one thing that the teachers would always say is like, you know the vocabulary, you know everything, but you really can't pronounce them. And I was like, I know, because I pronounced everything with like the German way. That's just the way I pronounced everything. And it was never correct. Okay, we're going to do about a teaspoon and a half of paprika. And then we'll give this a good stir up. And then this will be our kind of our base seasoned dredge. So let me grab a fork. And then we're going to mix up some eggs, and we'll get our chicken ready. And then when we do the second part, we'll add in some panko breadcrumbs and some Parmesan cheese to get an extra crispy on there. So we're going to give this a good mix up. I think I'm going to add just a little bit more garlic salt because you don't want to have it under seasoned. There we go. But everything else looks good. So I have this ready. And then I'm going to just slide this out of the way for now. Woo! Very close. And then let's get our eggs mixed up here. So I've got 3 chicken breasts. So I'm going to I typically like to use just 1 more egg than chicken breast so that I have enough. So I'm going to use 4 because you don't want to run out of your egg wash or your dredge or anything midway through because your hands are messy and then you got to get everything out again. So I always make a little bit more than I need so that I never run out. We'll whisk these guys up, and then I'm going to fillet my chicken and cut them into kind of slightly smaller pieces for this. And then we'll get them dredged and ready to fry up. And then I'm going to give my noodles before I do that, I'm going to give them a quick stir. Make sure they're all tucked under here. And then we'll move them out. But they're looking pretty cool here. I feel like these noodle style would be really good in a tuna casserole. I don't know why, but they've got that kind of, reminds me of the tuna casseroles that I had when I was a kid. It's not that I make them often. I've only really made 1 tuna casserole in the last year, and it was for a friend. But this daycare that I went to as a kid, it was like every Tuesday was tuna casserole day. Okay. Let's get these whisked up. Make sure you get all those egg whites mixed in there because you don't want to have any long stringy ones. And now they're going to be ready to fillet our chicken and then have that start prepping up. So I'm going to cut the chicken breasts in half so that they're skinnier. That way they'll cook up more evenly. When you're doing your cutting, cut against the grain so that it will give you a rough texture, but that's going to give you a more tender chicken cutlet. So it will look kind of shaggy, but that what you're doing is you're breaking up those chicken tenders or those tendons, not chicken tenders, and that will give you, again, just a more tender, softer piece of chicken. And then trim off any fat that you see because fat is just going to get rubbery when you fry it up because you're not going to be able to crisp it up nicely. And we'll get this going here. I know I haven't made fried chicken cutlets in a hot minute. And I was like, you know what? It's Friday night. It feels like a fried chicken cutlet night. Torn is very, very happy because this is his jam. And then there's pasta, which everybody loves. So we'll be happy. I'm going to cut some of these into slightly smaller pieces again so that you'll be happy with the chicken and the sourdough. Some people are difficult and don't like pasta. I know that just shouldn't be allowed. It's not normal. I keep telling that to him. Everybody loves pasta. It's so good. Okay, that one's good. That one's good. That's good. This one's kind of got a Hulk moment going on here. So I'm going to cut it. And I'm actually going to fillet part of this to make it a little bit bigger on here. So it'll be like an itty bitty one. But it'll be a jack size chicken parm. I'm just making sure I don't have any super huge ones. Okay, looks pretty good. Okay, we're done with this. What we're going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to give everyone a coating of our seasoned dredge here. And this is just going to bind with the eggs and then it will allow that second layer to stick on nicely. So we'll coat this guy up. And for this one, you don't have to do it one at a time. I can actually like toss in a couple of these and then we'll coat them. It's the second layer that you kind of have to do one at a time to get everything to stick on. But just make sure you've got the white flour kind of on all of it because that's what the egg will bind to and allow that breading to stick nicely. And we season it up well so that this flavor is going to stick on there because it's the first thing that touches the chicken. Get these last ones in. And then I'm going to give my hands a good scrub so that I can grate some fresh Parmesan cheese into here, as well as some panko breadcrumbs. Because with the Parmesan cheese, we're going to do it we'll have it, I got it all out of there. We're going to have it in the little breading, and then we're going to grate some over the top, and then I'll add some mozzarella cheese as well to give you that extra cheesy pull on there. So let me get my hands. And get there. And I will say Parmesan cheese is really, really delicious. It crisps up very, very nicely. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. And we're going to get a pair of scissors. I got a new one because I was like, I had a little teeny tiny, how I have those cubes that will last me forever. But I was like, this dish is going to use a lot of Parmesan cheese. So I might as well open up a new one. Keep telling myself that I just need to buy a whole wheel because I go through one of these probably every 2 weeks. So I'm like, I think I need a wheel. I want a wheel. A little ridiculous, but thank you, Aunt. We appreciate that. I'm going to grate in my Parmesan cheese here, and I'm going to look at about having like around a half a cup of freshly grated. Freshly grated works a little bit nicer than the like pre-shredded, just because pre-shredded is a little bit dried out. So this has a nicer melting point on it.
Do you have a day yet for your cookbook to come out?
Not exactly a specific day. We'll make a post closer to it. We're working really, really hard on it. I'm trying to get it in because, we set a deadline for ourselves to be at the end of March. And so we like to make our deadlines, but we've been it's a lot of work, just making everything beautiful and proofreading, double checking. I'm remaking a couple recipes to get some slightly better pictures and QR codes. Yes, the QR code endeavor, which I think will be awesome for it, is also a lot of work because then you got to find the video, make a QR code, link it on there. So there's a lot more work into it than just like writing your recipes down. But whenever I do something, I got to do it. I was always the person who I'm like, I'm going to do something. It's going to be I'm going to do it right on there. Okay, we've got our Parmesan cheese. We're going to add in our panko breadcrumbs. This will give a nice little extra crunch onto our yummy chicken. So add a good amount. We've got a good amount in here. And then I'll give this a quick toss up here, mix it in. And then we'll be ready to dredge these. But before we do that, I'm going to check on my noodles, see how they're going. I think, thank you, they're definitely ready. Perfect. So I'm going to strain them and then sit them to the side. I've got a big pot, so I'm going to use my big strainer today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these sit and rest over here. I'm not going to dress them with any oil or butter because they will, I want them to soak up our sauce. Make sure, I'm going to grab a couple. Got a couple stuck in here, but they are pretty cool. If I can get them out here, I can show you, but look at those really cool long noodles. They almost look like Goldilocks curls. Okay, I've got my noodles over here. I'm gonna let them sit and strain, and that way I can move this guy over here and we can get ready to make our sauce. I could have sworn, do I have my timer? How long ago did we put it in? Because I forgot to set my timer on that. Okay, so in 5 minutes. My watch does me no good. Apparently I used all the battery on it. Okay, we'll start dredging these up and then we'll get it in there because that's about me. I even just earlier today, I was like, oh, I'll double check. I couldn't remember. I always seem to forget setting the timer. Let's open this up. I got a new big thing of oil. We're going to have the oil start heating up because it always takes like a hot minute to get it nice and warm before we can fry it off. Because you never want to fry anything in cold oil or even just lukewarm or warm. You want it to be hot. I'm going to put just a nice basin in here. It doesn't need to be full to the top. The chicken doesn't need to be completely submerged, just kind of halfway up, knowing also that when you put a piece of chicken in, it will raise the level of the oil. Okay, let's get these guys dredged and be ready here. I'm going to take this fork out. We'll go into our egg wash and then into our seasoned Parmesan panko breadcrumbs. Make a mountain over here. The trick is your hand. Keep one hand clean. One hand will do your dirty work. And that way, if you need to turn the temperature down on something or do something, you have a clean hand to do it. It's better than the original method that I was taught as a kid was like a wet hand and a dry hand. But if you're touching the chicken, both your hands are still dirty. Keeping one hand and just doing it both means one hand will get very dirty, but the other one will be nice and clean. And that just allows you to have a little bit more freedom. We'll coat this up with our panko Parmesan cheese and seasoned dredge and give it just a little bit of a tap down. But as you can see, they're going to be lovely. And that Parmesan cheese crisps up really nicely. It's a drier cheese, so you don't have to worry about it like melting and oozing everywhere. It doesn't, it gets crispy, but that's why you want to use Parmesan and not necessarily other cheeses because the low moisture content of it. Okay. And then, get done with these dredging, we'll go take our sourdough lid off and then we'll pop it in there. And the nice thing is with sourdough, you've got a little wiggle room. So even though it's not going to be necessarily the perfect exact timing, with the lid on, you have a lot more room. It's protected, so it will just have that. And then the same thing, like you can always bake it an extra 5 minutes, and it's not going to make a big difference for it. It's not, you know, a macaroon or a souffle that you go over, or cookies, and then they're ruined. Like my Aunt Aggie's cookies, 30 seconds, go over just 30 seconds, and they go from being like super soft to a firmer cookie, and they're just completely different then. And we love them when they're like super soft. That's why I'm always like waiting to take them out versus like going over there. Okay, got a couple more after this, and then we'll got our whole basin here dredged up. I will say use a big enough bowl, high edges, because I used to always use my smaller bowl for this, and it would make it really messy. It took me long enough to switch to a slightly bigger bowl, but it just is a little bit easier there.
You have a question? How do you keep your rings clean with all the cooking you do?
You know, I wash my hands really good afterwards, and that's honestly it is. And I'm going to tell you, one thing that I used to clean my ring is in like an old toothbrush, like a toothbrush that I just used for that. The bristles really clean around the diamond and get everything done really well. So that's kind of the, you know, trick of the trade on there. Here. And get this last guy up, and we're ready here. Beautiful. And like I said, one hand's clean, one hand's dirty. I've got little paws almost here. So I'm going to wash my hands, clean them up, slide this guy right over there. And then we can grab our sourdough out of the oven and get that looking good. Okay. Okay, dry my hands off. And then when I come back, my oil should be fairly close to being warmed up. Okay. And slide these guys on. Nice and toasty. So we baked it for approximately 20 minutes at 500. We'll take the lid off, and oh, it looks beautiful. And we've got, you can see that black pepper and that rosemary peeking through. This is one of my favorite combinations. The dried rosemary, black pepper, and garlic salt. And I don't mix it into the dough. I put it in during the lamination process, and I feel like it spreads out nicely that way, but it adds so much flavor. I'm gonna bring this down to 450, which will give it a nice kind of golden brown crust, and we'll bake it for 20 minutes. There we go. And that is ready here. Okay.
Is there a request to go over what's in the dredge?
Yes. So the dredge on here is lovely. It's made with flour, onion powder, garlic, salt, Italian seasoning. So that's our base layer. And then I added in, after we did the first coating, I added in Parmesan cheese and panko breadcrumbs. I'm going to turn my oil down now to about a 5. I'm going to just drop in a little piece, see if it sizzles right away. Not quite yet. You want it to start bubbling right away. So it still needs to heat up a little bit longer, which is fine, because while that's heating up, let's work on our sauce. Let's bring this over here. Give me a little bit of freedom. Grab my onions, garlic, peppers, and my knife. And we're going to get our onions going. I'm going to mince them up. We'll saute them. Then we'll add in some peppers and some fresh garlic. Just going to jazz up our sauce just a little bit for it, so that it has a little extra flavor in there, and a few more vegetables. And that's one thing. I do love the Rayo's kind of marinara, the basic sauce, because it is very simple and not overpowering, which is really nice, because then you can kind of change the flavors to what you want it to be, but it's just simple, and I like it. And it's not sweet. I'm not a big fan of sweet marinara sauces. I like mine to be very savory, and theirs doesn't have any like added sugar. But that's what I always say. I'm like, if you're, making your own sauce is always great, but that does take time. And, people are busy, so we don't always have time to stew our tomatoes all day to make a lovely sauce. But go to the grocery store and just try sauces out until you find one that you love. That's kind of what I did. And I kind of settled on Rao's, and I love them. They're kind of my favorite sauce. And add in a splash of olive oil here so we can saute these onions up. I'm going to do around a tablespoon or so because we've got a good sized pan. And then I will check my oil over here and we'll see if it is nice and toasty now. I'm just going to drop in a piece of flour. There, we're getting that nice sizzle instantly. That's what you want. So now I'm going to turn my temperature down to right at a 5 because I don't like to cook my chicken over too high of temperatures because you want it to saute and fry. You want it to fry nicely and get a nice golden fry on it. So you want to do it over a medium to medium lower temp after your oil has heated up. And that will give you that perfect golden on there. And then we used a little bit of paprika in our seasoning base, so that will give us a slightly amber gold kind of color to it. I'm going to rotate that around, make sure I've got it over my burner, and we're going to let that fry. And now let's toss these guys up into the oil. I'm going to turn my temperature down to around a 3.5, 4, so kind of a medium low. One thing, the difference in your cooking with a all metal pan versus a pan that has a nonstick coating on it, like the HexClad, this takes a little bit longer for your heat to transfer through because it's going through another layer. Metal will conduct the heat really, really fast. So it's great for doing a high sear and stuff like that on there. But when you're doing it, you do have to watch your more delicate vegetables so that they don't burn, because I tend to cook it at a slightly lower temperature than I would on my nonstick pans. Okay, let's get our peppers. I'm going to dice my peppers up nice and small, just like my onions, so that, again, you've got little bits of veggies throughout here, but not big chunky ones. I find it's a little bit nicer. Kids don't, when they're little, they can't pick them out. They can't, but they also don't notice them. If I leave a veggie big, they'll pick them all, they'll eat around them. So I'm going to start kind of filleting them in half or slicing them in half. And then I'm going to mince them up. So I'm going to do nice thin strips and then I'll chop them. With onions, I find that with peppers, if you cut them from the inside versus the slippery skin on the outside, you're going to have a good grip on your knife, which means they're just a little bit easier to cut up.
Do you have a question? Where did you get that cutting board?
This is a relic from the past. I got this as a Secret Santa gift in college. Gosh, back in 2008. So it's been around for a while. I believe it's from Walmart or Target, because those are the only two stores in Ames, Iowa at the time. On there, I love this cutting board because it is big and things, and it's really hard to find them like this. I do have in my Amazon storefront a set of 3 cutting boards, and one is just about the same size as this. I use them whenever I'm at my parents' house when I do their cooking in the outdoor kitchen there. And those are the closest ones that I have found to this cutting board on there, because it is light, it's not super heavy, and it's been with me longer than my knife. And my knife I've had for 17 years. So with these minced up, there we go. And again, I like to do them a little bit smaller. That way my kids don't notice them quite as much, and they get a good, lovely saute on there. Let's add our peppers in here. Beautiful. I'm going to give this a nice little stir around, kind of coat them up, and then I'm going to mince up some garlic, and then I have a zucchini as well. Here. I'm going to check my chicken. I still think it needs a few more minutes, but I'm going to grab my spatula and our tongs. And what I like to do is when I'm checking it is you're just going to lift up with a spatula and look, this is still very blonde. So I want it to cook a little bit longer. You're looking for a nice kind of golden edge, little things. I will say when you pull out your chicken, it will get slightly darker after it's done kind of cooking. It kind of like it's like a suntan. It's sets in and it gets a little bit darker with it. All right, let's get our garlic minced up, and then we can flip those, and then I'll get some paper towels kind of set out so that we can put our fried chicken on there to kind of cool, suck out the extra oil, and which will leave it nice and crispy. So one thing is when you do move your chicken or anything fried out, don't just put it on a flat surface because that will cause it to get soggy because the heat will kind of make humidity there. So either put it on paper towels or a like cookie cooling rack so that it can either get the air on it. I like the paper towels because it sucks out some of that extra oil so you don't have a greasy chicken. Let's get our garlic minced up. And we can throw that in here to saute as well. Have about a little over a tablespoon of freshly minced garlic. That'll be lovely. And again, this is just to kind of jazz up our sauce, give it a little bit more flavor. But we're going to let them caramelize up first and really kind of get a nice flavor on them. Okay, I'm going to grab my paper towels here. We'll put them on a baking sheet. That way, when we're ready to do it, we'll have them there and ready. And then what I like to do is when I have the paper towels afterwards, I will use it to soak up the excess grease in my pan so that I can then just throw it all away. Okay, let's check these guys out. Beautiful. Nice kind of golden touch to it. You see how it gets that nice little reddish hue? That is from the paprika. Paprika is a really great for adding that nice color to your fried chicken, and it's very mild. I'm going to let this one cook just a little bit longer. I'm going to rotate my pan and put it right over here because I find that my pan's a little bit bigger than my burner, which means I typically have one side that doesn't get as hot, which is this lower side. But I like having the big 12-inch pans. Let's turn this up just a smidge. And then we're going to add in a little bit of garlic salt and Italian seasoning in here to kind of cook up as well. Let's get this, we'll do a nice little shake. About a teaspoon or so. I don't add too much because again, this marinara already has a little bit of a flavor to it, just to add a little extra and a little bit of garlic salt. And then we're going to get our zucchini in here. So I've got one zucchini and I'm going to dice it up. I'll probably cut it into 1/8 or 1/6 on here. So I have smaller bits, but I want it to have each piece have a little bit of green on it instead of like cutting it down the middle where you just have the section, because I find that the skin helps hold it together so it doesn't get as mushy. There we go. So I've got each one kind of cut into 4ths, so 8 altogether, and then we'll dice it up. And that way it will saute up and it will get great flavor, but it won't get mushy. Lovely. Okay, let me see if this chicken piece is ready now. Gorgeous. Beautiful. And we'll let those continue to fry. Now the second side doesn't fry quite as long as the first side. That first side takes a little bit longer. And then at every kind of chicken afterwards, because your oil in your pan is hot and the chicken is hotter versus when you first put it in where it's cold. Give this a mix. I want that high temperature, that heat to really bring those spices out and bring that flavor out. Smells delicious. Let's add in our zucchini. And I swear, I don't think I did set the timer. I was like, did I set the timer on this the second round? I did. I remembered. Got 8 minutes left, which is perfect timing. Okay. Give this a nice little mix around. Kind of coat everything up. And we'll let it have a nice little saute on there. And then we can start prepping the cheese that we're going to put on top. So I'm going to grab my mozzarella cheese out of the refrigerator. And then we'll grate up some Parmesan as well. And this is going to go on top because with chicken Parmesan, you've got that nice cheese pull on it. So we're going to do the Parmesan. I'm going to do actually a large grate on these versus a fine grate. Fine grate is great for the chicken because you don't want it too big and for like putting over your pastas. But if you want it to melt and make it a little bit easier, use your bigger grater. Less work. And you know, that's how I like it. Okay. I'm going to just cut off a chunk of this because we don't need that much cheese. A little bit of cheese goes a long way.
I like this question. Do you like working with other people in your kitchen?
Depends who those other people are. It really depends. If they're helpful, yes. If they know what they're doing, yes. It really depends. If I am trying to if I'm trying to teach the kids or do something like that, yes. If I'm trying to get a meal out at a certain time, no. That's one thing I'm not really great at delegating. I'm always just like, let me do it. So I know. I don't mind my brother-in-law. He's a really good cook. He's actually like one of my first inspirations to cooking because he really like was into that big fancy bougie doing everything, and I kind of learned a lot from him. And so a lot of times when like we go up to their lake house during the summer or they come here for Thanksgiving, we'll both kind of tandem like cook together as a team on certain things. Like we did homemade pizzas and beef Wellington and like going over there. So I don't mind with him because he knows what he's doing. He always has interesting perspectives. So I don't mind that. My mom tries to help me in the kitchen. I am like, get out. She's not very helpful. I'm always like, you can set the table. Oh, thank you, Judy. We appreciate that. Here is our beautiful chicken, nice and golden. The nice thing about cooking it on a lower temperature is once it's nice and golden brown and we filleted it through, you're going to know that it is cooked all the way through. You have to worry about is when you cook your chicken on a high temperature where it looks done on the outside, but then you cut into it because it didn't have long enough to sit. So these are looking pretty beautiful. I'm going to let that one sit here just 30 seconds to a minute longer so that it can get that perfect golden touch for it. But with chicken breasts, filleting them, and then again, having your oil start out on high, but then turning it down to kind of a medium, lower medium is going to give you that perfect temperature, like a nice 350 to fry it on, which is what you need. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I burn everything. And I'm like, your oil's too hot if you're doing it, or your chicken's too thick. So with chicken breasts, I fillet it through. If I'm going to cook, like make fried chicken, like, with drumsticks or quarters or something like that, I'll do a parboil on that, which means I kind of flash boil it for about, 5 minutes to start the cooking process because those take a little bit longer and you don't want to risk kind of burning those. Let's get this. Got a good amount of Parmesan cheese here. So that will be for our coating. Let me get this out now. See, beautiful golden brown. When you take it out, you want to put it the oil side down. That's going to allow it to be nice and crispy on there. So that's just one thing that's important. You don't want to put it oil side up because then it can get soggy. And then we're going to drop in our next round. And I think I should be able to hopefully get all of these in here because these are a little bit smaller. and also, I always say don't overcrowd your pan. You want there to be like a little river between each one, because if they're touching each other, then they're not going to get as much direct heat. They're not going to crisp up as nicely. So just slide it in here. I think I've got these to be nice because they're a little bit smaller. Beautiful. And I will be, people are always like, oh, 3 chicken breasts. Well, chicken breasts are huge. You don't need a full-size chicken breast per person. They're massive. So filleting them really gives you more than enough, because the breading process increases the size of your chicken breast and everything. So I always say chicken can go a long way.
You have a question? What brand is that toaster?
This is my favorite toaster. I just got it for Valentine's Day from my husband. It is a Smeg. It is gorgeous. It's a 4-piece toaster, but it allows you to do the sourdough. When I cut my sourdough, and if I do a big bowl, my pieces are like that big, and I can't fit those in a regular toaster. So this allows me to do thick and long pieces of toast. And it's like old school. So I was cooking up little mini bagels for Teddy the other day. He was having a honey bagel craving, and they like shot out. I was like surprised. At first I was like, I heard it go off. Where did they go? And I had to find them because they were like on the counter everywhere. But I really love it. It's super cute. And that is totally the reason why I bought it, because it was cute and it's Smeg. It's a bougie one, I had a really nice toaster before, but the little like handle things had popped off, and there was one other thing. Oh, and then the knob to turn the temperature had broken off. I was like, okay, I shouldn't have to like put it on every single time to do it, but it finally broke down. I should say my husband spent way more than he should ever spend on a toaster for it. And then I got him hooked. He was like, I really like their appliances. And I'm like, I know, they're so cute. They're so cute. And that's why I said, one day when we get a lake house, I'm going to have a Smeg refrigerator in there. He's like, we should get the whole collection. And I'm like, I agree. We should get the whole collection. We're going to have to win the lottery to get this. But, one day it might happen. Okay, let's get these guys. Good saute on them. They're just about there. We're going to add in our sauce here in just a second, and then we'll let the kind of simmer for it. And then I think we have about 30 seconds, it looks like, on our bread. So we'll go take that out here. But I'm going to put my marinara sauce in here. So I'm using 2 types. I'm using Rayo's marinara and Rayo's vodka sauce, which I find that the combination of the 2 together is perfect, because the vodka sauce has that kind of creaminess to it, but it's not overpowering, and it's actually like one of the more red ones. Okay, we're gonna get one in, and then I'll put the other one on, because I'm gonna have to use my little trick to open it up. I'm gonna give this a quick stir, and then turn that temperature down, because with marinara sauce, you don't want to leave it too high, or you're gonna pop, have exploding tomato sauce. But here's my gorgeous. Love it. I know it's so ridiculous, but all the kids say they like it, so it's winning. Oh, this is beautiful. Here is our gorgeous sourdough loaf. This is my rosemary black pepper big loaf. So we baked it for 20 minutes at 500, then 20 minutes at 450 with the lid off. Now, the one thing I always say is, once you take it out of the oven, take it out of your Dutch oven, because that Dutch oven stays like 350, 400 degrees for a while, because you want it to stay nice and beautiful and golden brown. So I'm going to put this guy right here. Look at that gorgeous loaf. And this one has the most amazing flavor. I'm going to tell you, black pepper, rosemary, garlic salt during the lamination process. You sprinkle it all over. Gives you such great flavor. It gives you that almost that restaurant quality, like, bread. If you go to like Macaroni's, there's a restaurant, and they have really good bread. Aha, I got this. Didn't have to use my trick.
All that working out.
It is all that working out. I know, I was really excited. My watch, so far I had over 21,000 steps, but I guess I worked it too much that it died. So I was like, they still count. They still count. I was like, I should have went and charged it midday. And let's mix this in for our base. Beautiful. And it looks so yummy. And then I'm going to give it a quick taste, and then we're going to tuck our noodles in. Delicious. So I'm going to get my noodles out here, but let me just check my chicken real quick. I'm going to give a rotation. Okay, a little bit longer. They're still kind of a blondish color, and I want them just a little bit darker. And then I'll know that they'll be ready. Because ideally you want them to have this nice kind of golden amber color of our fried chicken. Okay, so here are those crazy Fusilli Capri noodles in here. Now I'm going to put them in here. They'll probably be stuck together, but don't worry. Once you start touching them into the sauce, they'll break apart. I don't like to coat them in oil or anything like that because then they won't soak up the flavor of the sauce. So you just need to spoon, apparently inflict sauce at my husband. That's what he gets for not liking pasta. But just give them a little love jiggle here, you know, and they'll start to break apart. Again, I don't like to coat them in oil or butter because that creates this barrier on them that prevents them from absorbing the flavor of your sauce. And with the marinara, you want those to seep into the noodles, and it just makes it so much better. So I don't serve my pasta like growing up. We always had our like spaghetti in one bowl, our sauce in the other. You put it there, and then you kept them separate. And then the next day, your noodles were like one big solid mess. Throw your noodles into your sauce. This is why I call this my sauce or my pasta pan, and coat them up. They will make your noodles taste so wonderful. Cook your noodles to right at al dente or a smidge before so they have plenty of room to soak up that extra flavor. Look at that. Now you can't complain about having a dry pasta with no sauce on it. Okay. And these are, I'm going to say, these are really cool noodles. They're like so long and thick. Don't worry, I also have another really cool noodle that I got there that are like this long. And when we were at the store, because we were doing ODPR, Olympic Development Program soccer, and he's like, you can't break those noodles. And I was like, I promise I will not break them. I will be patient and let them sink down, but they're like this long. And I think I'm going to make like a lasagna soup with them because they're kind of look like a lasagna noodle. And I think that'll be really cool. Here we go. We're going to flip these over. Again, just this lovely touch of golden, kind of an amber one there. Again, that's from the paprika. It really gives you this beautiful coloring. We'll flip these guys over. Perfect. Beautiful. And now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of coat on here. I'm going to tuck that in here. We're going to add our cheese on top so we can pop this in the oven and let it melt up on top. And then we'll tuck our chicken in at the end. Now I do keep some of my chicken separate for those crazy ones who don't like marinara sauce or not marinara sauce, pasta. We want a nice coat. This is a mixture of our mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. I'm going to see if I need to add any more on here, but I had about 2 cups of mozzarella with around a half a cup or so, maybe closer to a cup of Parmesan cheese, freshly grated. Let's add a few more this side so that it gets that nice kind of cheesy top to it. Beautiful. And then a little bit more Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go pop this in the oven, and let me grab my pot holders because it's gonna be a little bit heavy. And we just need it to melt it. So we don't need anything to cook. So I'm gonna put it in there. My oven should be nice and hot from the sourdough, but I'm gonna turn it to my air fryer setting, which will allow it to cook a little bit, kind of rotates that air around, cooks it a little bit faster. So I'm gonna put it on my air fryer setting at 425. Convection bake at 425 works well as well. Only needs a few minutes in there, which is perfect because we're just about ready for our dinner here. And get our chicken finishing up frying here. And then we've got our sourdough that we can cut in just a second. Taking a look. Just a few more here for it. But again, this is our fried chicken. We seasoned it with Italian seasoning, garlic, salt, onion powder, paprika, flour, and that was at our first dredge. And then after we did our first dredge, then into the egg wash, we put it into our second, which is our seasoned dredge with panko breadcrumbs and Parmesan cheese. So it gives you a nice kind of wonderful crunch to it on there. That Parmesan cheese really crisps up well when you fry it, which gives you something a little bit extra with, chicken Parmesan. Because, we want it to be nice and delicious on here. I'm going to slide this over here. And I'm going to grab my little Parmesan because we're going to be ready for this guy in just a second on there. Let's grab and have this stuff ready. This is one of my kids' favorite meals because it's pasta and it's fried chicken, and you can't beat that. And we have our sourdough. With sourdough, we'll be able to cut it in just a second, but you don't want to cut it when you first take it out of the oven because if you do, it's going to be really gummy inside. So you do need it to sit and rest for just a few minutes so that it steams up nicely. So let's check this chicken here, see if we've got this nice kind of golden color. Just about there. I always look around because different parts of your pan get a little bit more heat than others. So, always kind of thoroughly check them. So this one's still blonde on there. So we want it to cook up a little bit longer here. Okay, grab this in here. I'm going to grab my plate out. I'm going to rotate this right here. And then we can get ready to check on our pasta, see if it is ready to come out. Because it won't take long to melt that up, and we don't want it to get too overdone here. I'm going to see if I need anything else. Put my chicken right there. I'm going to bring my cutting board over here. This guy turned out so pretty. He's very, very bulbous. It's got a nice on there. It's always nice when they get a good height to them. Which is one thing I do like about baking in a Dutch oven. I typically have taller loaves when I bake in a Dutch oven versus when I do a free bake because there's a little bit more structure that keeps it going up versus spreading out. And so it gives you a slightly taller loaf for it. Okay. Let's see if these are ready. If they're not, we'll go grab our pasta out. Just about. We're going to go grab our pasta out because that should be nice and crisp up, and then this should be ready and we can start tucking our chicken into it for this. So in our oven we have our marinara sauce that we added garlic, onions, and sweet peppers to, and zucchini, and then we've sprinkled our cheese on top. So we've got just about, I maybe give it like a minute or two longer on there because I want it to be perfect, guys. Okay, let's grab our chicken out. We'll let it sit, and then we'll go grab that out here in just a second. They'll be ready to serve up here.
You have a question? Is the big camera to keep the cameraman alive?
Yes. We had two of them. One of them's already kind of partially deflated. We took the kids to Dave and Buster's earlier this week, and the aquarium restaurant, and we have an insane number of tickets. So every time we go there, we they can pick out every ridiculous thing they can imagine from that little thing. My kids are really good I will say my kids and my husband are really good at winning the jackpots. And we always, every time we go, we get like 10 plus thousand tickets. And then you can keep them on your card. But back in the day, my husband and I used to go as like a date night. We would go out to this, there's a big mall here called Opry Mills. And we used to go out there. We'd like watch a movie, play some games at Dave and Buster's, eat at a restaurant. And so we always never used our tickets because, you know, we were adults. We don't need a ticket. So when we started having kids, we had like 100,000 tickets. And so we've just been doing this every Thanksgiving. We also take our nieces and nephews there, and we're like, get whatever you want, because we're like coming in like kings and queens with the special card. We finally used up our old card that had like, it was so old you couldn't actually use it on the games anymore because it didn't have that little like special like clicking going. It was an old swipe one, but I was like, it has so many tickets. And we finally used it up this past Thanksgiving. And everything, I was like, and I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I've got like 20 of them. And I was like, get whatever you want, whatever you guys want. And they came out with like the most ridiculous stuff, like a rainbow poop emoji, because we needed a giant 3-foot one, like weird stuff on there. Here is our beautiful chicken Parmesan. We're going to tuck our chicken into it. So I'm going to take the ones. Now, I always leave a couple out for those who don't love it, but we'll put it right in here. I like to put mine right on top instead of necessarily always putting it underneath and baking it so it doesn't get as soggy on here. But this is where it's at, guys. And then I'll save a couple chicken tenders out. But look at our gorgeous chicken Parmesan. Pretty easy, guys. I know I'm going to grab this. I always do. So I'm just going to play it safe. He's going to put that on there. I almost grabbed it. And as you notice, I tend to grab things that are really hot. There's my bread knife. It's right here. So I make sure not to grab it. Okay, we're going to cut our loaf. I'm going to grab a little, my little shovel out if I have it. I do. This is the best utensil ever. It's a shovel. There's really no other name for it. But let's cut up our bread, and then we're going to serve up our thing. So this, again, is my, here, that nice crispy crust, my rosemary, black pepper, and garlic loaf. Beautiful. You can see when I do the lamination process, which is where you kind of see swirls of it, you have that flavor here. But this is a gorgeous loaf. I'm going to cut up a nice slice of this to go with our meal because it's so good to dip into the marinara sauce. And it has just this, you can hear that wonderful crunch on the crust. And yes, it is very hot, in case you're wondering. Although everyone tells me I've got like a skin of a dragon, the heat does not bother me. So here again, look at this. So soft. I can just like almost fold it down in half. We can grab it there, but look how beautiful that is. So we've got the world's largest piece of bread there. And we're going to be serving that up with our chicken Parmesan. So I'm going to reach in here, and there's going to be this amazing cheese pull, guys. We're going to see if we can get it all down. Look at this. So this is with our Fusilli Capri noodles that I got at World Market. And then we made a lovely marinara sauce, added in zucchini, onions, sweet peppers, fresh garlic. And then we grated fresh mozzarella and Parmesan cheese over the top of it and let it do a quick little bake in the oven. And then we have our hand-breaded fried chicken that is seasoned with Italian seasoning, garlic salt, a little bit of paprika, panko breadcrumbs, and then, of course, our delicious sourdough bread that is made with rosemary and black pepper. And then to finish everything, because you always need more Parmesan, a nice sprinkle of Parmesan cheese over the rest of it. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single night, trying to show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, our chicken parmesan and our homemade sourdough bread, and you can watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my 6-quart saute pan, my Hexclad, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.